Alrighty then. Cause I'm here. We're here, we're back. It's me, Jade. It's been a long time, so I just wanted to make this thing because I fucking felt like it. Uh I'm here with my associate Nick. Say hi,
Who
Nick.
are you? It's been too long. I don't know where I am.
We're in the void. We're in the dirty, stinking otaku void. Because that's
No,
what we
didn't your
talk
Twitter
about.
profile say you're like in the eighth dimension or something?
Yeah, like no, it's the third or fourth dimension, something like that. I
The
forget what
50th
dimension I'm
dimension.
in.
I gotcha.
Yeah, I'm actually a 26th dimensional being. But yeah, on to
Damn.
the main topic of this video, which is lonely anime fans. So I guess kind of sort of continuing with the theme of these videos, like, or I guess the other video we did on just the term weeaboo
Yeah, I was
is,
trying to remember because I felt like we talked about this a little bit in something else, but I
yeah, we
couldn't remember
touched
what it
on it.
was, and it was that. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is a different angle to it. It's more along the lines of how anime fans will kind of fall into deep, deep loneliness, and it's something I've personally experienced and that I've seen other people go through. So I just wanted to you know, talk more in depth on it and really go into detail on the things I've noticed about it. Um, so the first thing that I've noticed, and really isn't just limited to anime fans, but it's the idea that everybody else is happy and you're not, and you're lonely, and your life is like shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
This one is mainly comes from my own personal experience, where with moments where I'm just like in a deep depressed depressed atmosphere, and I'm just not feeling it. And it's such a pervasive mentality, again, even outside of like anime and manga, even outside of these fandoms. Like, people in general tend to have this, like, you could say it's navel gazing or just a very egocentric way of looking at things. But this idea that you're the only one who's miserable and everybody else is living a great life. And this is compounded by social media, where a lot of people put forth their best face, right? So, on a social media account, you're not going to see the bullshit in somebody's life or anything they're unhappy with, even though
Unless they
everybody,
actually actively talk about it.
yeah, exactly. Like, most people just kind of like brush that shit underneath, push that shit under the rug and don't talk about it, especially if you're talking about normies. But, we're not talking about normies. We don't talk about them. They don't exist.
Well, I feel like that's a different discussion for its own day. Like, what classifies a normie
Yeah, exactly.
these days? Because it's kind of like this weird segregation ideal, or not ideal, idea within the community. But yeah, we'll get into that some other time.
Yep. And effectively, that's one of the main causes for this loneliness in the beginning, is, again, that whole, oh, you can only see yourself and how much you're hurting, but not really thinking about, okay, the world outside of you. And it sounds like I'm throwing shade, and I kind of am, but I'm kind of not, because it's just a basic observation. I think everybody does to a certain extent, right?
Yeah, I would say that I like, again, I can't speak for everybody, but I know from my own personal experiences that I've definitely had times before when I see people online and they talk about something, or when I see how people are able to enjoy something, it feels off to me, and it feels like I have this disconnect now because I necessarily don't feel the same way, or say, like, it can be anything, because it can be down to, like, somebody able to enjoy like a show or something that I can't, or even do something weird like, and I felt this way for a while and I've always tried to change it, but to the concept of how people are able to watch seasonal animes like as they air while I can't.
Yeah.
I'm horrible at it. And I always felt like how can they do this? And I hate it because I feel like I would be left out of the conversation. And I felt like every time I saw it, I'd like have nothing to say because I can't like keep up with it. But it's one of those things where you just kind of have to like realize that it's completely fine that you're not exactly like everybody. You can't do everything like everybody can do, and that there's differences like that. And yeah, as you were saying before, just because some people put out like fairly happy tweets or stuff that seems very positive and nothing negative doesn't necessarily mean they have nothing negative in their life. I think my account's a perfect example because I don't post any of my issues or problems I'm dealing with usually on Twitter.
Yeah, definitely. Like, you're pretty squeaky clean. Like,
but I mean, I like in reality, I'm not like that 100% of the time. Like, I have my own things I got to deal with constantly, and
yeah, everybody.
But I just like to present myself in that way because I always see going to Twitter, talking to people, retweeting things, liking things is just kind of that escapism, just to just kind of have fun for a while. And
that really is what, like, you know, the internet and what anime and manga really should be for people, like a way to kind of, you know, get away from, you know, the bullshit of life. I think part of the reasons why otaku, you know, and anime fans in general are just so bad at this is that we spend, or at least that's the case with me and what I've seen generally in the community, is that a lot of us spend a lot of time alone, and that isolation makes it very easy to kind of get in your own hole where you're not really thinking about, okay, you know, how, you know, everybody else is doing, or how the heck I should, like, you know, show, or whoever the heck should show themselves to the world in general. You're just thinking about, you know, your own problems, because that's the way that's how you've interfaced with the world for so long, is like by yourself, as depressing as that sounds.
Yeah, well, yeah, because it's the idea, like, no matter what, you're always going to be with yourself. Like, you can't change that. You can't be, oh, I'm going to go be this person now. My mind is going to be in this other person's body and experience their life. You can't do that. You're always with you. So you know yourself more than anybody, and your perception of yourself is always different compared to everybody else's. It reminds me of in Evangelion, one of the really, I think it was Evangelion that did this. I want to say so. That, like, when there was one of those moments during the show where Shinji was like thinking to himself, like, you know, those moments where he's having these like deep, like, philosophical rants to himself, and he's talking to somebody or himself, and they're talking about how there's not just one Shinji, there are multiple Shinjis. There's a Shinji to Rei, there's a Shinji to Misato, there's a Shinji to Asuka, and all of them make up the individual, because like everybody's perception of somebody else is completely their own and different, and it's all kind of a part of you, but yours can be very different from them. And it's kind of like this weird, like, when you think about human interaction, it's like this deep thing that's like, whoa, you don't necessarily think about it, but it's kind of true in that regard.
Yeah, that Ava deep shit.
Yeah. Ano letting out his rants about why he feels the way he does in a way.
Yeah. Moving on from that specific topic, another thing that kind of contributes to the loneliness, you know, otaku and anime fans, you know, just the general presence of so many happy couples everywhere in fiction. Like, I sometimes joke about how, like, sickening it is sometimes it's happy and it's sweet and I like it, but at the same time, sometimes I'm like, my God, it's so sugary sweet. And why are you guys so fucking happy? I feel so inferior. Like it's like watching a show like Ore Monogatari or something like that, where it's a show about a guy, meeting this girl and getting into this nice relationship and being happy and shit. And then I look at my life, or any kind of otaku just looks at their life and they go, I don't have that. Man, on one hand, you kind of get into this weird place where you kind of fantasize about, okay, what your life would be like if you were that person, or you get into that weird headspace. And once you come back to reality and the anime is over, then you're reminded, it's like compounded on top of you even further, that, oh, I don't have that special someone in my life. Oh boy, that went dark.
I mean, I can understand where you're coming from, because it's like, this reminds me of when I was like getting really constantly involved with shoujo stories.
Man,
like
that's
shoujo anime and stuff.
A lot of it.
Yeah, where you get to experience all these like romances, because I'm a sucker for romance storylines and whatnot, especially when they're done well and the chemistry's so good between the characters. But like there's a mixture between like it's kind of weird, because while yes, these storylines are completely fictional, and granted, like the things that happen and the way things play out is very fictitious, it's still more realistic than anything else usually in the anime industry. Like it's not like, it's more realistic than a shonen storyline.
More grounded than like a lot of
like romance shonen can happen. There can be relationships between two people. Like you can do that. You can't use gum fruit powers and shit. That's never real. So there is that difference. And when then you kind of get grounded and you like realize that it's kind of this weird disconnect. It's kind of how I sometimes see, or how I like to rationalize how sometimes it can be weird when I don't know if you've ever had this, but I know it's been like this for me, where you look at one set of like characters in a relationship and you really like it, and then you look at another one and you just kind of get annoyed because, say, if you like one of the girls in the storyline a lot, while you think the relationship makes sense, you kind of feel annoyed because you wish you could be in that position, and you wish you had that bond that you're trying to experience, that because the story's trying to like express it that way, but it feels off because it's like, no, that's not the right way or whatever. So
yeah, I absolutely get that. You're just like, at the same time, you also end up feeling just a slight bit pathetic, because you're like, man, exactly. I'm like fucking pining over this fictional fucking girl. What the fuck is up with me? You got that? Yeah.
Then that connects back to what we were just saying with the whole personal thing, because it's like, us just talking about this between me and you right now, we both can confirm that we've both felt that way, and it's not something that only we have, and it's like purely like, oh, I'm pathetic. No, it's just like, no, it's not abnormal. It's like those kind of things happen.
It's a lot more common than we'd like to think.
It's just classic grade A jealousy coming into play, where it's just like you have that yearning for something that you can't acquire but somebody else has, and you just kind of want it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Okie dokie. What else is on the chopping block? Another aspect to this is just the self-pity aspect to this whole otaku loneliness dynamic. Like a lot of otakus, and this is again probably because a lot of otakus tend to be loners. A lot of them tend to fall into the trap of self-pity, of not really trying to do anything to better themselves. And really, I'm not really any better. I say this as if, I'm better than like, okay, I've got all the answers. I know everything. Like, nah, I've fallen into this myself, which is why I understand it. Is that a lot of anime fans, and I've seen it myself, they just fall into the trap of just self-pity and not really doing anything about the problem, which is, loneliness. And loneliness isn't necessarily just solved by romance, which is a big thing I've seen in the anime community. Okay, it's like, I want a girlfriend so bad. Oh, why don't I have a girlfriend? No, right? And sometimes loneliness, you could solve that shit without like, the romantic element. Maybe like get a group of friends IRL and go out sometime. Maybe, foster more friendships online, do some more stuff with like, groups of people, and not necessarily be so hung up over what you don't have. But yeah, the self-pity thing is like a real big thing. It's a real big trap.
It's what it reminds me of, like, how it goes back to the concept of when we were talking about weeaboo and how it's like, it's this like derogatory terms that's getting passed around as like a joke, and it almost seems like there are good, like, examples of people that suffer from like the pittiness or self-loathing and whatnot that legit like do feel that way, and then there's some people that just make jokes of it because it's seen as kind of like it's what
trendy
the trendy, like, it's the way to seem like you're a certain group or something. It's weird in that regard. So you can see it as some people legit feeling that way, and then other people seem like they're feeling it that way, but they're mainly just using it for like jokes and gags. They're like, oh, like that, like when you see memes into like, oh, I'm this character, and then there's like this hot character, and it's like, I'm him, you're like, you think you're this or whatever. It's like that kind of shit where it seems like I just lost my train of thought.
Yeah, don't worry. Like, straight up.
I was like, I was going somewhere and I'm like, oh shit, I lost myself with that explanation of the joke.
It's a pretty informal video to begin with, because, I'm trying to get something out that's, fun to make, and, while I'm working on other projects. But yeah, like, I totally get where you're coming from, because another point I was thinking about is how many otakus kind of like or relate to a character like Hikigaya Hachiman from like Oregairu.
Oh yes,
where
he's like one of them. Like, when I think of characters that people always say like, I love this guy because I relate him. He's like the most prominent character I've ever seen get that treatment. And it's funny because I really like Hiki, but I don't consider myself like him at all. But so it's like I'm in one of the groups of people that like him, but it's like I don't feel the way as he does. So.
Yeah, I can relate to him, but I wouldn't say I'm like him,
Yeah.
Yeah, he's very relatable, but like the thing about Hachiman, or the whole point of his narrative, is that he's supposed to be like a character who, through all this bullshit that he's gone through throughout his life, that he's become this really cynical and depressed and self-loathing person, to the detriment of his own life and the people around him who care about him. And it takes a while for him to actually realize this and want to like change for the better, and actually give friendship and love a chance, because he rejects it mainly as a defense mechanism.
Yeah,
so that he doesn't get hurt from actually having to like try and form bonds. And in a lot of ways, you could say Oregairu is kind of like Ava in some ways, because oh my god, I've never really thought about comparing and contrasting frickin' Hachiman and Shinji, but no, there is that kind of like, there is a kind of relationship I think that they share in terms of like distancing themselves because they don't want to get hurt, or they fear that
the connection and how it's painful. Which I think both Evangelion and Snafu do such a great job of like portraying those in characters that feel very relatable and realistic, but they don't do, it's not like it's a very out there or in your face kind of moral like, oh, you shouldn't be a loner because you're being a dick. But it's also not like it's also not promoting this action either, like it's okay to be a loner. It's saying yeah, you feel this way, but it does a gradual shift. It's showing like the good and bad of being that kind of a person, and how like this is like your impact towards other people when you're like this, and how complex your relationships with people can be. And that's what I really like about both of those stories, is that they take a character like that who is relatable to so many people because of how like socially awkward or just isolated they try to keep themselves. And in the case of Hachiman, being kind of that cynical guy who's sits there critiquing everybody because like he's kind of that outcast. And then you get to see that while they do speak some truths, they're not perfect like anybody else either, and their way of thinking isn't a 100% perfect either, and that you know you should be open to like many other avenues as well.
Yeah, like the reason Hachiman is so critical of, you know, relationships and the way, you know, some of the popular kids in his class, you know, do things is because secretly deep down he desires that thing but is afraid of it. So he's trying to, you know, this is kind of basic human psychology, like people tend to try and shit on things that they think they're missing out on. So he's basically trying to distance himself in that way, but, you know, discovers, oh, deep down that's what he really desires. And that's in a sense you could argue that's what a lot of anime fans are like.
Hence the relatability there. By so many people.
Yeah, you don't want to get hurt by like putting your heart on the line and actually trying to form, you know, deep relationships, you know, putting yourself on a stand, maybe, you know, being embarrassed or having to like deal with, you know, the bullshit of, you know, reality. But so you like try and distance yourself or say, hey, this is bullshit. You don't,
it's a backwards way of like trying to protect yourself from hurting yourself or anybody else, but in the long run all you're really doing is just hurting everybody. Yeah. Okay. And I guess the final thing I've thought about, but you know, we can keep going after that based on whatever else we have to say, is, you know, assholes in real life and on the internet talking shit about you because of your hobby. So, you know, the biggest thing that I've noticed is like a big part of why a lot of otakus and anime fans think the way they do, or, you know, feel the way they do about themselves, is because a lot of people have said a bunch of bullshit and talked a bunch of crap about how, oh, you're a loser, or you're a freak for liking this or whatever, or, you know, basically the notion that all anime fans are a bunch of incels in their mother's basement and, you know, stuff like that. And a lot of people just kind of buy into it. And based on that image they have of themselves, which comes from people just a bunch of assholes, like they think that, oh, that this is the natural state of things, that it's okay for them to feel this way about themselves. Are you talking about the kind of people that will make the sort of comments that like never trust a person with a profile picture of an anime character?
Oh yeah, the anime,
that kind of person.
That was like a big meme like probably like a year, 2 years ago, where it's like, oh, you have an anime Abby, shut the fuck up, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where, granted, some anime Abbies are pretty wild, but I also think it's like the same notion as saying, and this is a little bit wild, but I get to say this because I'm black. It's like saying that, like, oh, because somebody's black, they're bound to have a gun on them or whatever, or be gang affiliated, or looking at some teenage white boy and saying, oh, he's probably a school shooter. It's just, you're looking at a person based on this abstract element about them and then making a snap judgment. It's not really fair by any stretch of the imagination. It's a little bit funny, but it's not like that wild. It's pretty ludicrous as well. But yeah, it's like that, and you see it all the time. Like, people just buy into the bullshit others have to say about them, and you really don't. And this is something I've especially come to learn and understand over the years of dealing with people, is that, like, just because somebody says something doesn't mean it's fucking true. Like, it's like that one line I remember, anime related, but it's just a fucking amazing line from Song of Fire and Ice, Game of Thrones. I think this was the first book, where Jon Snow is up in the north and he's getting fucking picked on by a bunch of people in Castle Black, and who are calling his mom a whore, right? And then one of the guys, I forget that dude's name, says, yo, but your mom is what she was, and nothing they say will ever change that. Yeah, it's the truth is the truth, right?
Yeah.
And especially with something so opinion based, on like calling somebody a loser, like who you are, right? Now, and I think this is going to be like a golden take for me right here. Right? Like, you are who you are, and your assessment of yourself is what should be the most important, right? Like, everybody, like Nick was talking about earlier with Ava, like, everybody has their own idea of who you are, but like, you also have your own image of who you are. Nobody has a full picture of who you are but yourself. They have an idea of who you are based on, like, who they've kind of interfaced with. Like, it's their version of you in their head, right? And the person whose opinion you should feel is the most important is your own. It's not a matter of like whether they can live with you. It's a matter of, can you live with yourself? And if you can, then fuck them. What they have to say doesn't fucking matter, and you should treat it as such, and like, hold your head high.
Don't base who you are solely on one person's comments about you.
Yeah. And when you get into that space of thinking, oh, I'm just this shitty, dirty otaku anime fan, you start to get lonely, because again, you think everybody's having fun and you're not, and you're this person that is, lonely.
Yeah, when in fact you could have a much better life than you realize, or you have access to be able to make something better for yourself. You have, like, sure, there's always going to be asshole people out there that if when you interact with them, they're not going to be the nicest people and they'll do things you don't like. But there's also many people out there who will also be able to bond with you in some sort of fashion or sense. And it can be over one thing. It doesn't have to be over everything. Like, you can be friends with somebody based just on one interest, and then it grows from there. Or you can be friends with somebody who has many different interests you have, and it kind of goes from there. But it's like, you shouldn't just allow what other people have to say about who they think you are as necessarily to be the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Yeah. When in reality, it's It's a mixture between what you think of yourself, what other people think, and how you kind of blend all that together to kind of form yourself. But in the long run, you're the one that's going to be with yourself no matter what. So you kind of get to have the most say about who you are at the end of the day. So kind of, and realize that what other people have to say is never going to fully be exactly what you may think and what may come. And everybody can change, everybody can grow, everybody can do different things, and it's never going to be one set stone path for the rest of your life or whatever.
Yep, exactly. Now, I don't know if this would be retreading ground we've already gone through, but I just feel like fucking saying it right now. And this is my big 100% virgin approved take, is that what the fuck is like everybody's, or like all the guys in the anime community, what the fuck is the obsession with, like, you know, I guess getting the pee touched? Like, guys are like, and I'm talking about not necessarily with, like, you know, anime loots or whatever. I'm talking about with, like, the obsession with, like, a relationship as the measure of happiness. You could go. We could go into this as like a.
At first, I thought you were being like, "What's up with people with hand jobs?" I was just like, what?" And then it's like, "Oh, you're talking about like them just wanting to be in a relationship."
Yeah. Like, I think this is just kind of a society problem.
Oh yeah, I would definitely say it's a very society thing.
Yeah,
like your self-worth is based off of the fact that you're in a relationship.
Yeah,
it kind of goes back to that. It harkens back to that stupid stereotype of like, oh, like, you can't say anything because I have a girlfriend, you don't, or vice versa. If you're a girl and you're hearing that from a girl who has a boyfriend or something, like, it goes back to the whole virgin mentality, and you have less say, or you're inferior, or you're like some piece of shit because you haven't had sex. When in reality, it's like, that doesn't matter when it comes to everything.
Determine your self-worth.
No, like, that is one facet of a person's life, and it does not have to do with everything that revolves around them. Even when you're obsessed with perverted things or sexual things, like, that's not the end-all be-all of who you are based on the fact of you've had sex, when really, like, in reality, no one should give a shit. Like, it should be only for yourself. It shouldn't even be like that measurement, in my opinion, but it's just always evolved, and I always felt like it was just some sort of stupid thing that somebody decided to use as a prop up, and it's become popular because of it.
It's definitely one of the most obnoxious aspects of, you know, current culture, that, like, in fact, to the point where, like, you can't escape it in debates about, like, okay, about, like, I guess the worth of men nowadays. Like, you think about the current insults that certain groups of people who shall not be named, you know, it's like Voldemort, that they use, like calling people incels and some such, and calling, and also just kind of like the idea that you're like having a girl, or, you know, having a significant other somehow makes you the fucking, that you've achieved the golden standard of the universe, that you're now the master, you now have big dick, or I guess for the ladies, big boob energy.
Yeah.
And it's quite fucking annoying.
It really is.
Yeah. And it's like infected the anime community. So now everybody's kind of sort of retreading old ground, but from a different angle. Just everybody's so fucking obsessed, as particularly the guys, so fucking obsessed with being in a relationship. And this sometimes manifests in the form of what I like to call virgin thirst, where guys who, whenever you have like a female anime fan in a group of guys,
Oh yeah, I know where you're
every
going.
fucking every fucking dude is like tripping over themselves to like get with that girl. Sometimes it'll be like in an online setting, and that's extremely interesting to me because half the time I'm like, wow, like you guys don't even know what she fucking looks like. You guys are fucking like, you guys are down. They're going after these girls, right? And every girl who's in like a community of anime fans that is gay probably knows what the fuck I'm talking about. And they're shaking their heads right now.
Why
Like,
specifically gay though? Like, what if they're straight?
I was saying, like, if they're not gay, then they probably like. Usually, that like.
You mean that
off.
they probably are hiding it then? You think?
No, I'm implying that like, oh, if it's a gay girl, usually guys back the fuck off. But if they're a straight girl, like, or if the person hasn't shown anything, like they shown interest in guys, there's like this. It's like, fuck, I fucked up.
Oh man, this professional video is ruined.
Yeah, it's oh, whatever. We'll probably fucking cut this shit.
Nah, man, leave it. It's
leave it in. Yeah. Who fucking cares?
Your phone had something to say about this.
Yeah, my phone had something to say. It's a really disjointed video. I haven't talked like this in a long while, so
Nah, you're fine.
yeah, I'm just having fun. Who fucking cares?
Exactly. Don't judge your self-worth on this video based on what other people think. Anyway.
Okay, so where the fuck were we? Like something
you were talking
girls?
about I mean, you were talking about like how like the whole thing about when a guy finds out that there's a girl in the anime community that's like, you know, part of it, and then their
oh yeah, the
reaction
thirst,
towards
and
it,
like
so, yeah.
all the freaking beta orbiters come out from the woodworks, and yeah, every girl who's in the anime that's not gay probably knows what that is, and even if they are gay, they probably have guys who like swoop in and like are stalking them for like a while until they're like, oh, she's gay, guess what? And I sort of understand it. It's kind of like you're in a community with a bunch of people you perceive as being like-minded, and it's the mindset of, I only have a chance with people like me, or it's probably best to be in a relationship with people who are like me. It's that mindset of going after who's similar to you, but it doesn't always work out like that, especially since a lot of these girls probably have no interest in like 95% of the guys in there, which is probably even more depressing when it's like when it's guys, a ton of guys, but like only one of them actually ended up with a girl. So it's this weird atmosphere of like some guys are like probably like a little bit jealous or a little bit thirsty for like a girl who's in the group that they're in, you know, all kinds of weird shenanigans like that. And in some ways I feel like that's the reason why some girls who are probably anime fans don't make their presence known more often in like online communities, because if you look
I can
around,
definitely understand where the whole idea of like covering that aspect of them would come into play.
Yeah, if you look around in a lot of like, you know, in a lot of anime based communities, a lot of them tend to be, you know, dudes.
Yep.
And I'm thinking to myself, you know, there has to be like female anime fans, but where are they? Where art thou, Juliet? Right? And, you know, it came to my attention that like most of the girls who I see who are the most open with their presence, like they're not like ninja hiding away in the bushes or something are girls who are in a relationship or girls who are gay. And I'm thinking, where all the straight hoes be at? Yeah, they're probably hiding, or they're not letting their presence be known because they want to avoid this shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm always in that category of just like, I just feel bad because it's like, they don't deserve this shit at all. Like, just let them be them for what they be and enjoy what they want and not be hounded with this kind of dumbass shit.
Yeah,
like, I'll be the first to admit that I'm always like a bit nervous and uncomfortable when I talk to somebody who I know is female at first, but then over time I'm fine, and it's just kind of like, oh yeah, because it's like that. It's a weird thing of you kind of make it in your mind that somebody who's the opposite gender, especially if you're attracted to the opposite gender, is especially if you're somebody who's like introverted and not very good at talking with the other gender, or like just doesn't have as much experience, and it feels like this alienation, weird, like, oh my god, I gotta act all differently, I gotta be completely different, I gotta be like, put up my best performance. You know, some people don't do that. They just like, they're just completely open about being like, I fucking want you, when that's not the way to do it at all. So it's like this, like, I understand that part of it because I felt that way. I've definitely gotten better with it now because you just got to understand that everybody's a human being, and like, just treat them as a person and kind of just get to know them, and then things happen that way. Just don't, like, the reason why I would assume so many girls in the anime community have either only show themselves as their gender once they've actually said that they're in a relationship, or have when they confirm that themselves as being a certain sexuality, or just keep it hidden, is because they just don't want to deal with that bullshit. And my response is like, I just don't think they should have to begin with. It's just
they
like,
really shouldn't, but it's like a regrettable circumstance because a lot of these guys probably think, oh, it's my only chance. It's my only chance, because like their whole perception is that, you know, they feel like they're extremely lonely, and they feel like they're in pain from being in that loneliness, and they think the cure is like getting into a relationship. And
it's that idea of like, as soon as you have a girl in your life and you're able to bond with her, and you have her in a relationship, everything in the world will be fixed, and you'll have a complete, pure, fantastical life, when that's not the case.
Yeah, that's not the case at all.
Just because you're dating somebody doesn't mean, or being in a relationship with anybody doesn't mean that something can happen and then the relationship ends. It's not that simple.
Yeah, life's a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah,
I'm afraid. It's why I'm in no hurry to get into a relationship, because, you know, little secret about me, like I've been around the place, and I've seen people who, you know, family members and just, you know, friends and stuff. And I've seen so many relationships either just be like really not so great, or just fall apart so like tragically, that I can't help but think that, like, relationships really aren't the solution to all your problems. If anything, they might just complicate things.
They're like anything. They have both benefits and consequences. They have their very good points to them, such as being able to have somebody that have a unique connection with like that, and being able to do things with a person that you necessarily don't do with other people. And that's like a really added interesting bonus. But at the same time, like, that's also something you have to maintain. You have to know how to properly be in a relationship. You kind of have to figure out, like, and you have to also realize that when you're in a relationship with somebody, it doesn't mean that everything is always going to be hunky-dory. It doesn't mean like you're always going to be on good terms. It doesn't mean you're always going to be happy people. No, stuff will happen, and you'll feel disconnected, but it's both of your job in the relationship to realize that you have to talk about it and move on, and all that fun stuff. So It's just like anything. It's just like any relationship. You have to be able to maintain it and realize that it's never going to be perfect.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, romances are just so idealized because they become so like fantastical. When in reality, that's not the case.
Yeah,
it sucks as much as it sucks to say that. That's not the case.
Yeah, it really does suck. But the reality of it is that everybody. I can't remember who said this. I don't remember his name, but somebody in the comments, if anybody does fucking comment on this video, like tell me there's a guy on Twitter that I remember seeing, and he's like this he's a guy, he's got a high-pitched voice, and I'm not sure if he is I'm not sure if he's like paraplegic or something another, but he looks like he's in a chair from like looks like he's in like a wheelchair, and he's kind of got his most defining feature is that he's got a high-pitched voice, and he's disabled, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things he said that has kind of stuck with me was that like part of being mature is or being a mature person is recognizing that everybody has their flaws, and that nobody's perfect, and kind of accepting that, and making yourself flexible so that you can have at least a good relationship with somebody. That's part of being a flexible person. This goes for like friendships and like romances, right? And what makes what an immature person does is that they can't accept that they're superficial and judgmental, and instead of thinking, okay, I have flaws, and this person has flaws, we all have flaws, it's looking at the first thing you don't like about somebody and kind of tearing that apart. That to have a successful relationship, you really have to be mature, right? And in my mind, like there are a lot of people on anti-Twitter that they might not hear this, or a lot of anime fans probably won't get to this video, but there really are a lot of them that are going to end up into relationships, and they're going to have to learn through like pain of going through these relationships that the world's not perfect, that that the romance you see in like an anime or a movie isn't how things are, but it'll be a good experience. It's what's going to make them stronger, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing I want to say, is that like pain is what makes people stronger. So in a person's loneliness, I would say not to look at it in a sense of, oh, I'm in so much pain, woe is me. It's, what can I do with this? Where should I go with this energy? Or what should I do about this pain, basically? Not, wallowing in it. Like if you're going to have this experience, you should try to like learn from it.
Yeah, you were saying something and I was going to say something in response.
Yeah, it's such a this is pretty funny. Maybe I should call this the fucking amnesia cast, because we keep forgetting.
Welcome to our therapy course where we talk about how to improve your love life, and
we talk about how to get the ladies for these otaku guys.
Oh, now I remember. I was gonna say, like, even though we have to lay down the facts of the concept of real life relationships are not as they are in fiction, it doesn't necessarily mean they're bad. It just means that they're still, like, even though it's not as it's depicted, doesn't mean you can still not have a lot of fun, and you can do a lot of great things and do
Yeah,
things you would have never
absolutely.
expected. That shit happens, and that's what you have to go for more. And instead of just like get sad about the idea that it's not perfect, you just have to look for the good and not stick to the bad.
Yep.
And that's how I say, like, you should really approach most things, is just try to realize like what good you can do and how you can go up, not how you can go down, how you can go up. And yeah, it's yeah, that's the whole pessimism versus pessimistic, but whatever. Point is, there's still good out there, so it's not like it's negative. And
Yeah,
that's all
definitely. Okay. So went through a lot of different fucking shit on this video. Now I may have like one more thing I want to talk about if I can fucking remember it.
Yeah, go for it.
So the one last thing I like to say about like loneliness and anime fans is is that people, especially like anime fans, like a lot of times people end up in this position of loneliness or feeling lonely because they're in a place where they don't necessarily feel open enough to like approach or do things or go out and try to see who will respond to them in a positive or negative way, who will respond to them in general, right? A big part of like why a lot of otaku or anime fans can't get in a relationship is just that a lot of them aren't willing to like go out and do what they need to do to like get there, and that involves potentially that involves putting your heart on the line, and doing things that may or may not result in a positive response. And a big part of the reason why people don't do that is because they're addicted to like the positive. They're obsessed with like kind of what people think of them, right? And that's also a source of loneliness, is getting into a place where you care so much about like what somebody says that you're unwilling to go up and just be yourself, right?
Yeah.
So self-expression is like extremely important. I think that's probably like the biggest thing on this list. Like a lot of people, while they're on the internet or social media or whatever, particularly on places like Twitter and Instagram, where you're in front of a lot of strangers, it's very easy to see, I guess, a side of people that you may not see in places in real life, or like when you're not talking to them in a place where they have to put forth more of their own physical form, I guess, as weird as a way to put it. But
it is another element when it comes to communication that you kind of have to like, which isn't prevalent in text communication like we do.
Yeah, it's an extremely extremely awkward as that came out. Like, it's so fucking awkward. But yeah, like,
it's okay. I get what you mean.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is basically, be more you, right? Like, one of the biggest mistakes people make, and I've been figuring this out recently, especially over the course of this year, that this is something I've done for like quite a long time, and I'm like, kind of putting myself through, mega levels of rehab to like get out of this, is just being who you really are. Like, be who you are and like accept the responses people will have. Not everybody's going to have a positive response, and that includes, you know, girls too. Like everybody gets so hung up on like the every word of somebody else, right? And because of that, it stops them from going out and just trying to see who they'll connect with. And because of that, you end up lonely because you feel like nobody gets you and nobody understands you. But it's, you know, it's a weird cycle and sort of turn of events, because the reason why you feel that way is because you haven't gone out and see who may or may not connect with you, because you're afraid of getting hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of going back to the whole point of Evangelion. Man, Evangelion is such a fucking show.
Ava's amazing, man. Ava has so many great things that's so connected that you can just take from it. I find myself constantly pulling things from that and having it affect my mental state. In a good way. I shouldn't say it makes me depressed, but it has so many different cool things. But anyway, enough Ava shilling. Keep going.
Yeah, like, I'm not saying to go out and be a fucking asshole, right? Because nor am I saying to completely be a nice person. Just, you know, be who you are and say what comes to your mind.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I find that like being this way, you end up having so many more like interesting interactions with people. And just an interesting perspective on the world. And I think this is kind of what a lot of people in, you know, popular culture and in society, especially in the anime community, are just missing, is that element of just being whoever the fuck you want to be. You know, I always have to conform to this idea of trying to be perfect. Because when you try to be perfect, ultimately you end up not doing anything at all for fear of failure, which you could almost say is kind of the point, or like the meta narrative of this entire video. Because this entire time we've just been fucking up nonstop, but at the end there's gonna be a fucking video, right? I hope people fucking find this entertaining.
Gotta put it out there anyway.
Yeah. And yeah, it's basically the core of what I have to say. Just, you know, take the steps to make your life better. You know, if you're feeling lonely, find people to interact with. A lot of times, you know, hopping into a Discord call, if you're part of a Discord server, will like help. Or, you know, going out with like IRL friends, you know, calling up people. If you don't have friends, you have to put in the extra effort to make them and, you know, form those connections. That way you don't feel lonely when you are in that position. And if you're with people who make you feel lonely, then you're probably not with the right people.
Yeah, no.
Yep, that's something I had to learn. Probably before we go, I might as well tell like one last story about myself and like something I learned out of it. So when I was in middle school, right? The story kind of goes into like late middle school, like 8th grade into, you know, early 10th grade, right? When I was in, you know, late middle school, 8th grade, I started hanging out with of people who kind of, you know, who I called friends, but they kind of treated me like shit. They weren't like outright, like, I wouldn't say they were like bullying me or anything. It was more like I was kind of like, you're kind of like the butt of the joke of the group, that kind of like dynamic, right? And I kind of let that go on for a while. And the reason why I did that was because I couldn't stand the idea of, you know, quote unquote, not having any friends, right? But just because you're with a group of people and you call them friends doesn't mean they're really your friends, because at the end of the day, people like that aren't there for you when you really need them, right? And on top of disrespecting you constantly, it's like, are these the type of people you want to be around? And ultimately, I didn't really wake up to it immediately, but I just had a moment where I had a choice where I could choose to hang out with, those people, or I could, hang out with a completely new, different group of people. And that's the decision I had in 10th grade. And I made that decision, and I leaped over the people who were more supportive and who were just all around better people to be around. And you can always make that decision. That way you don't feel lonely in a group of people. So yeah, not a very dense story. I might go into it in more detail someday, but you get the basic idea.
Yeah, the point there still stands that you're never tied down to one group. You can always
you can always find
change
new friends.
Yeah.
Like if you have shitty friends, just find new ones.
Don't hang out with people who just treat you like dirt the whole time and nothing else, or just in that kind of context. But the only thing I was gonna add when we were talking about the whole be yourself thing is I always stand by 2 rules: just be courteous and kind as much as you can. Doesn't mean you have to be happy and nice to everybody, and be yourself. I think those are the 2 most important things when it just comes to interacting with people.
Yeah, and if somebody can't accept you for who you are, then they don't have to be. You don't have to have them.
Yeah, you don't have to interact with them.
Yeah, it's a big fucking world. There's plenty of people who will accept you for who you are.
If you don't like somebody, just move along. Just go somewhere else and talk to somebody in a different situation. You're open to multiple different. We have access to multiple different ways to interact with people, so it's not set in stone for one certain group or people forever.
Anyway, I think that's the main gist of what we had to say. I think we're petering off on like things to say.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I had fun making the video, and I think that's all that fucking matters. I keep saying fuck a lot, but it's fun. I like saying the words.
Fuck.
The best word in the English language,
other than poop. Poop's just funny.
Anyway, that's all we had to say. Later.
Peace.